Because in reality, there's nothing to be morally outraged about. It's just survival. Is the gazelle morally outraged that a lion chases it? No. Because the gazelle isn't sophisticated enough to be able to bullshit itself with complex conceptual moral systems. It just runs away. See, it doesn't demonize the lion. But if the gazelles could get together and create a worldview, what would they do? They would create a worldview where the lions were the most evil ones in the in the animal kingdom. Because that's what would serve their survival. And that's exactly what humans do. It's not good or bad, it just is what humans do. It's survival. Survival is not good or bad, it's just survival. What unites all of life? It's that we're all selfish as fuck. And what unites all humans is that we're all selfish as fuck and we're totally dishonest about it to ourselves. We don't admit it. But also, some of us are much more selfish than others. So let's not pretend that all of us are equally selfish. There are degrees of selfishness, and it is important to take these into account. The reason I'm telling you all this is because it's important as part of your growth process and your maturity process to appreciate the brutality of life and survival. It's a very brutal game. And it's important to integrate survival and spirituality. You can't hold these two things as separate. A lot of times people will actually use spirituality as a sort of pseudo-survival strategy, and what they do is they use spirituality to either attain a moral high ground or a spiritual ego that they can use to then judge people who maybe haven't gotten as high in their development and evolution. But that then itself becomes survival. Because if you're truly doing spirituality properly, eventually spirituality will lead you to realize that the entire game of survival is a charade, is a fantasy, and that it must be transcended. And ultimately, that's what you'll do if you follow spirituality to its ultimate conclusion. But of course, most people are not cool with this. Most people only want spirituality as an enhancement to their survival strategy, which is why we get religion. That's what religion is. Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, even Buddhism in certain cases, it's for most people to transcend survival is such a radical thing that they can't even open their mind to the possibility that religion or spirituality actually is leading them towards that. Instead, they co-opt spirituality as just an additional tool that they can use to help themselves to survive. That's why this work is so tricky. Because your ego is always going to want to co-opt these ideas. Even the stuff that I teach with Actualized.org, you've probably noticed that your ego constantly keeps co-opting the things that I say in order to actually build a sort of a spiritual self-actualization identity rather than actually transcending all of that. And so self-actualization becomes part of your survival strategy. Watch out for that. Notice that. It's a very tricky trap. Also, it's important at the same time to realize that all survival is actually done out of love. And this is what unifies selfishness and selflessness. Everything is made out of love. Every human action is done out of love. Even every animal action is ultimately done out of love. You know, why does the lion chase the gazelle? Because he loves life as a lion. Because the lion loves his family, ultimately. And the only way he can maintain his family is by hunting down a gazelle. Why does the bank robber rob the bank? Out of love of money, or out of love of being a criminal, or out of love for his family if he needs to provide for them. See? It's just different degrees of love. There can be very high degrees of love and kind of low consciousness degrees of love. So all the stuff that you call evil, that's a low consciousness degree of love. It's a very partial love. It's love only for a very limited self, whereas the higher versions of love are love for self as the entire universe, the universal self. So that's the only difference between devils and saints. They're both doing it out of love, but the devil is doing it out of a very partial, limited, divided form of love, whereas the saint is doing it out of a universal form of love. And also, very importantly, the saint understands that the devil is doing it out of love. If you don't understand this point, then you can't really be a saint, because the only way that the saint can truly love universally is by realizing that he is all the devils as well. And so the saint doesn't really fight the devils, because the saint just realizes that they are me. And so really the saint loves the devils to death, you might say. This removes the duality between selfishness and selflessness. And always remember ultimately that the devil is God in disguise. All of it is one, all of it is God. So make sure that you don't hold survival as bad. And that's very tricky. That's very hard to do, because all of your impulses, all of your survival impulses are pushing you towards seeing good and bad in the world. Good and bad, that distinction is itself a core survival strategy. See? Only people who have transcended survival can lay down the label evil and bad, because they literally don't see it in the world anymore, because those labels are a part of survival. And so long as you're surviving and you're stuck within survival and you haven't transcended it to anything higher, then you're going to have to keep using that label of bad and evil. You can't help it. You're stuck on autopilot. That's what survival is.